Good morning, everybody. This morning we're going to be talking about glazing. This is your section 14 notes, and what we're going to look at today is just really the basics of glazing. And for your notes, when we look at these elements, think about glazing as paint for your ceramics. If you were to be making something that wasn't going to go in a kiln, you could very easily paint it, and that would work out similarly, not quite as nice and not quite as successfully, but it's essentially the same thing. So what I'd like to do today is to show you some glazes, talk about the application of the glazes, how some of them turn out. They can be rather surprising. Some of them are not anything like you would expect them to be, and show you something about what we do have in our studio. So, good morning, everybody. This is going to be section 14 of your notes, and this section is on glazing. And today we're going to look at some really basic elements of glazing, different types of glazes that we have, the different effects that you can get with the glazes on your bisqueware. I'm going to show you a little bit about what we have in the studio itself. We have some very basic colors, but then we've got a big collection of stuff in the back, which I think I'll show you as well. To start with, glazing is basically paint for your bisqueware. It works a lot differently than paint, though, because unlike paint, glaze is not water-based. Actually, it is water-based, but it's a water mixed with resins and glass, so that it doesn't work the same way that paint does. If you put paint in the kiln, it would simply burn up, and you wouldn't have anything left on your bisque when you got it out of the kiln. With glazes, however, because they're glass, they mostly just melt in the kiln, and they melt and stick to your glaze, and there's a lot of chemical elements that go into this that are rather complex that I don't even understand. So things come out very differently than you expect them to sometimes, but they're also very exciting and very interesting, and they can be very unexpected, like I said. But to get to your notes, we say ceramic paint equals glaze. When glazing, always use 3 thick coats of glaze, and I'll show you that in just a second. But as I said, we do have a lot of different glazes, and I wanted to show those to you. We've got just a few. Most of them come in jars like this. And I've got a few here because I want to show you how we can glaze a little piece that I have. So I've got these, but then in the back, I want to show you that we actually do have a lot more than these. This is yellow, this is white, this is blue, as you can see, this is red. But, as I said, they can be rather surprising, and this one is actually not in a green jar. This is clear, and it goes on very green, but it comes out clear. So some of them can be rather surprising. And as I said, let me show you what we've got in the back. And as we take a little tour through our pretty much empty student area, this is where our students will be keeping their work, you can see that we do have a lot of different glazes back here, and they come in a big variety of colors, some in open jars, some we haven't opened yet, some in big gallon type jugs, and some in very little ones. Those are little testers that we have, but we do have quite a few. When glazing, always use 3 thick coats of glaze, and you are going to be applying these as if you were applying paint onto your pieces. So I have a very small piece right here. This is a little flower that was left over from a couple of years ago. This has been bisqued, so you can see that it's very white. It's not the gray of the leather hard clay or the plastic clay. And basically all you need to do is take your glaze. They need to be mixed up well. I've already mixed these up a bit before we came out. I'll stir this one up a little bit more. And then just like paint, use your brush, some glaze on your brush, and just paint it on there. It tends to dry rather quickly. And if you can see this well enough, you can see that I'm getting a lot of brush marks and a lot of lines on it, which is why you want to put 3 coats on, because With just one, you're not going to get a very good coverage. So now I have my first coat on. It's covered once, but you can see again that it's not very thick and it's not very well covering the bisque. But we'll hang on to this until it dries a bit more, and then we'll put some more on. In the meantime, as I said, if your glaze is too thin, you'll be able to see brush strokes and bald areas when it comes out of the kiln. If your glaze is too thick, it may drip and glue itself onto the kiln shelf while being fired. And this brings me to one very, very important point. This is going to go into the kiln. When it goes into the kiln, it's going to go bottom down with the glaze on top. Because, as I said, this is not paint. This is liquefied glass, really, and when it goes into the kiln, it's going to melt, and it's going to adhere itself to the bisque. If you have any glaze on the back, when it goes into the kiln, on that shelf, if it has glaze on the bottom, it will stick to that shelf. That glaze will melt, it will adhere to the shelf, and you'll never get this out again. So one thing you need to be very, very careful of is not to get any glaze on the bottom of your piece at all. As I said, our glaze colors can change when they react to temperature. So I'm going to tell you right now, and I mentioned this before, don't be too surprised if you put something in the kiln and it comes out a completely different color than you thought it was going to be. Don't be surprised if it comes out looking much, much different than you expected. One thing about pottery is that it's just full of surprises, and it's one of the good things about pottery. It makes it a lot more fun and unpredictable. Sometimes you love the way things come out, and sometimes you don't. But you always have to expect something unexpected. That is for sure.